Hello and welcome to the Angling Flaneurs. Today we're at the Oval Cricket Ground to see the first day's play between England and South Africa in the third Test match. I'm with my son Jack and we've travelled to Liverpool Street and we're walking over to the Oval. We've just taken a short break opposite the Houses of Parliament, very close to the National COVID Memorial Wall, and we're just enjoying a cup of tea and a chocolate brownie at the finest place in London to enjoy such pleasures. I really recommend you going here. It's owned by David and the brownies are as good as any I've tasted anywhere. We're just doing a wonderful panoramic view of London. You can see the Houses of Parliament where our wonderful MPs reside. We can also see where the River Tyburn enters the Thames and the former site of Millbank Prison. And fleetingly we can see Lambeth Palace, but we'll talk a little more about that in a few moments. And before you can see the array of wonderful goodies that the owner David provides. As I said previously, it's really well worth a visit. And it's become something of a ritual for the Angling Flaneurs when we're in this part of London. Lambeth Palace is the official London residence of the Archbishop of Canterbury. The residence was acquired about 1200 AD and you can see the style is of the medieval period. The name Lambeth embodies Hythe, which means a landing on the river, and it's fitting that archbishops came and went by water here for many centuries, as did John Wycliffe, who was tried here for heresy in 1384. Wycliffe was a dissident in the Catholic Church and he questioned much of the pomp and ceremony, and he advocated also the translation of the Bible into the common vernacular. Also, the Palace of Lambeth was attacked in the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. And before us we see the wonderful Royal Vauxhall Tavern. When we're not looking at a Red London bus, the tavern offers a very warm welcome to everyone. We've made it. We're now at the wonderful Oval Cricket Ground. And before us on the left hand side we can see the wonderfully restored Oval Mansions. This building stands next to the iconic gasometers of the Oval, so any cricket fan really identifies this cricket ground with this iconic building and scene. But it wasn't always like this. You'll see now on the video the magnificent Ian Dury, poet, singer, actor, extraordinary performer. Now, Ian lived here in the early to mid 70s when it was affectionately known in local terms as Catship Mansions. It was a squat, and I believe for many years it was ignored by Lambeth Council. Lambeth Council during the property boom of the 1980s soon realised that they had ownership of a really valuable asset. So they soon went about converting it into some real high value real estate, which it now is. It was whilst living at this wonderful address that Ian penned his magnificent album New Boots and Panties. I should mention that it was Ian Dury and the Blockheads that produced New Boots and Panties. Sorry for the initial omission of the Blockheads. I certainly don't want any blockheads coming after me. We're just about to see on the video the mural of Ian Dury that appeared overnight on the Cricketers pub, which we'll also see very shortly. The Cricketers pub has been closed. It's an iconic venue for cricket fans for many decades, but it's sadly no longer. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of redevelopment, but you'll see it very shortly on the video. And before us we see the sad and distressing sight of the Cricketers pub. Now let's hope this site gets redeveloped shortly for the benefit of the local community and it doesn't just become another investment silo that is of no use to anybody locally. We can now see the Kennington Park estate before us, and this was built in the 1930s by the London County Council and comprises 12 5-storey blocks, and many of its blocks and streets are named after cricketing greats, and rightly so. We're now in the Oval. We're sitting in our seats in the gallery stand. What a sight we see before us. It's truly wonderful. But the bad news is at 11:15 we've just been told that play won't start till 11:30 because of the poor weather overnight and early morning. But we're sitting with the Barmies. That's the Barmy Army and Supporters Club, and we're very near the Trumpeters, so we should get some good sounds through the day. My history with the Oval goes back to 1976 when England played the West Indies here during the very long hot summer and drought we had, and I can remember that the outfield, which now is very green, even though we've had a very warm summer and a drought, was really like a beach at that time, and that was probably to me the most iconic test match that I've ever seen. It's really the most memorable one, and I'll go into that in a few minutes. I'll give you a little bit of background about the events of that test match, and it was really that helped me write my book. I'll go into that again a little bit later. Now, many people will state Lords in North London as the home of cricket, and I guess officially that is the case. But to me, the iconic ground of English cricket has always been the Oval. Now, I know that's an incredibly contentious opinion to have. If you're from Yorkshire or Lancashire, you're probably going to choose Headingley or Old Trafford. If you're from the Midlands, you might choose Trent Bridge or Edgbaston. So it's just a personal view, so apologies for offending anybody. I guess memories shape your opinions of a place. I've been to Lords a few times. I haven't seen any particularly memorable games there, but every time I've come to the Oval I've seen something really memorable, starting off with that famous test match in 1976. You can see the two respective captains, that's Dean Elgar of South Africa and Ben Stokes of England. They're out there on the square for the toss, and I believe that England have won the toss and are going to put South Africa into bat. In cricketing parlances and under this heavy sky with a damp square and outfield, the wicket could be doing a little. And we've got Jimmy Anderson and Ollie Robinson and Stuart Broad in our team. So why wouldn't you put the opposing team into bat? As we know from this wonderful summer of baseball cricket, that England like to chase in the fourth innings. And that's enough for the time being of my extremely poor imitation of a BBC cricket commentator, or Sky commentator I should add. But with those horrible dark skies surrounding the Oval, I'm really thinking that we might struggle to get any play this morning or early afternoon. There is so much history and stories around the Oval going back, indeed over 200 years, that I can't do it justice. I'm not even going to cover a fraction of what's happened here over the past couple of centuries. So I'm going to cheat on the vlog. I'm going to do lots of pictures of plaques that are against the walls of the building of the Oval, and they'll tell you a story of what's happened here. I'll add a few comments here and there. Shortly we'll see a plaque showing that the Oval here was the site of the first FA Cup final in 1872. The Wanderers beat the Royal Engineers 1-0. Now this year, 2022, Liverpool beat Chelsea in the FA Cup final through a penalty shootout at Wembley in front of 90,000, so how times have changed. There's some information on the iconic pre-war test match of 1938, where England scored 903 for 7 declared, which was a record score, and Len Hutton got the highest individual test score of 364. And before us we can see the bowling analysis of 9 for 57 by Devon Malcolm against South Africa in 1994. A game I can remember well. It really was an exhibition of sustained, ferocious fast bowling, a wonderful sight. I mentioned Devon Malcolm, but he was referred by the chairman of selectors, Ted Dexter, as Malcolm Devon. Well done, Ted. What a brilliant chairman of selectors you were. Nice to see that the ladies cricket teams are also getting a look in. Finally, we're reaching or trying to reach some form of equality in the game. We've seen it with the 100 recently, where the 8 franchises have a ladies team and a men's team, but I still think there is some way to go in terms of matches played and certainly in terms of pay. Very soon you'll see a picture of Ebony Wainford-Brent from Surrey and England, and a big shout out to her for the wonderful programme that she's initiated called the ACE programme to re-engage the Afro-Caribbean community back into cricket. People like Ebony are doing much more for the game of cricket in this country than stuffy MCC members in stuffy rooms at Lord's Cricket Ground. Now let's talk about fast bowling, and when you talk about fast bowling in these parts for Surrey, then the name Sylvester Clarke always appears top of the list. Sylvester was the only fast bowler who made the great IVA Richards wear a helmet, which he did twice. Richards faced the likes of William Thompson but never wore a helmet. He saw it as a weakness, but not when you're facing someone like Sylvester Clarke. Tail-end batsmen on the county circuits would have nightmares at the thought of facing Sylvester Clarke. They were talking in the dressing room that it was only a week or so until they played Surrey and they'd have to face Sylvester Clarke. He was that ferocious. Very sadly, Sylvester died at the age of 42 in his homeland of Barbados. He played for the West Indies only 7 or 8 times. Of course, it was during that time when West Indies had a battery of great fast bowlers, which we will talk about very shortly. I talked earlier of that iconic test match here at the Oval against the West Indies in the long hot summer of 1976 as being the most memorable iconic test match of my life, and it was an example of batting and bowling that made it so memorable, plus the joy of the West Indian supporters supporting a victory. It was during this test match that we witnessed the magnificent batting prowess of Sir Vivian Richards in scoring 291 in just under 4 sessions. It certainly was the best test innings I've ever seen in my life, but of course this is highly subjective. Of course, since and before, there have been many truly great test innings that will be other people's favourites. And before us we can see the jubilation of the West Indies about to win that iconic test match. During that match, Michael Holding, that you'll see in the centre of the picture, with his right arm around Sir Vivian Richards, had match analysis of 14 for 149 in what many people think was the greatest display of fast bowling ever. And I for one would certainly not disagree. It was quite memorable watching Holding bowl. I've never seen bowling as quick in my life as what I saw during that test match on what was a batsman friendly pitch. Viv got his 291, Dennis Amos for England got 203 in England's first innings, so it was a really flat pitch. And the other great West Indian bowlers like Ampen Holder, Andy Roberts struggled, but not Michael Holding, who pitched the ball up and just beat people through sheer brilliance and pace. Earlier in the summer of '76, the England cricket captain, the South African Tony Greig, said that he would make the West Indies grovel. Now you can imagine the reaction of a white South African saying such words to a West Indies cricket team. But on the second day of the Oval Test match, as the West Indies made 687 for 8, there was only one man grovelling, and that man grovelling was Tony Greig. I went to the third day of that Test match, which was the Saturday. England were replying to the West Indies. They batted for the first 2 days. England were making a decent stab at it with Dennis Amos, who went on to score a really good double century. And late in the afternoon, Tony Greig came into bat. Now, there'd been this atmosphere over his early comments about making the West Indies grovel, and I think they just tried that a little bit harder, bowled that a little bit quicker. Now, Holding came on to bowl and bowled him with an absolute thunderbolt. I can remember Greig's leg stump cartwheeling back 15-20 yards, maybe more, back to the West Indies wicketkeeper Derek Murray. But what I'll never forget about that afternoon is the cheer and jubilation of the West Indies cricket fans around the Kennington Oval. It still makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It really was something to behold. There was real redemption in those cheers. I've been to sporting events, many sporting events over 50 years, but I've never witnessed such an atmosphere, such joy and jubilation as I saw on that day at the Oval in August 1976. This truly was redemption, and you could feel it everywhere. And if you're interested in the events of 1976 in terms of the West Indies cricket tour and the emergence of punk rock through the Sex Pistols, the Band and the Clash, you might like to read my book, 1976 Punk Cricket and London's Burning. It's a historical fictional account of what happened during that summer of 1976, and it also includes a chapter on Ian Dury. You can see the weather is still extremely miserable. I certainly don't think there's going to be any play before 4 o'clock, so we can take a quick look at the field of play, or non-play I should say, and it's covered with tarpaulins, so we may not be too lucky today. Very soon you'll see a picture of another Surrey legend. That's the great Jim Laker, arguably England's greatest ever off-spinner, who in a great career took nearly 200 test wickets, and in one match took 19 wickets. That was Old Trafford in 1956 against the old enemy, Australia. And those of a certain vintage may remember him as an excellent BBC cricket commentator. You'll see a plaque there commemorating the first ever test match on English soil in September 1880. And it was here that W. Dury Grace scored 152, becoming England's first test century. The first ever test match was played in 1877 between England and Australia at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. It was 2 years later, in 1882, that England played Australia at a test match at the Oval, and Australia won that test by 7 runs within 2 days. And the Sporting Times printed a mocking obituary notice for the death of English cricket, which led to the creation of the Ashes Trophy. I believe the bales were taken from the ground and burnt as a symbol of the demise of English cricket. Another 2 years down the line, in 1884, saw another test match between England and Australia, and the first test double century was scored by Australia's Billy Murdoch. So we're here at the Oval Cricket Ground, where arguably cricket's greatest trophy contest rivalry started. It really is, it's a memorable place. Another Surrey legend comes into view, the great batsman Ken Barrington, who averaged nearly 60 in Test cricket. That's a truly memorable feat, and who very sadly passed at the age of 50 while managing the England cricket tour to the West Indies in 1981. This is another iconic venue around the Oval, the Archbishop's Tennyson School. Now, if you watch cricket for any great length of time and seen Oval Test matches, then you would have seen numerous TV footage of this school. In my mind, and I'm probably biased, there's no other cricket ground in England and maybe the world that has so many iconic views in and around the ground. Again, I've probably upset a number of cricket fans by saying that. It's just been announced that play has been abandoned for the day. No ball has been bowled, and we're going to get a full refund at least. So we're now going to make our way home. We're not going to walk along the South Bank. We're going to make our way up to the Elephant and Castle and up through Borough High Street. We may stop at my favourite pub, the Rake and Borough Market, for a quick snifter before making our way back to Liverpool Street. Newington Butts, and its name has always fascinated me. It's an area just south of the Elephant and Castle. We're continuing on the Kennington Park Road from the Oval, and it's also the birthplace of the famous scientist Michael Faraday. Now, Butts is a name given to an archery practice field, and it really comes from late medieval Tudor times, when men of a certain age were meant to practice one afternoon a week at the skill, if you like, the sport of archery. so they could prepare themselves should they be needed to perform their skill in the field of battle. And now we come to arguably two of the most famous sons of this area around the Elephant and Castle. First of all, we see the great actor Michael Caine, a true son of the Elephant and Castle, and then very shortly we'll come to the great Charlie Chaplin, who was born and raised in this area in real poverty, and went on to be arguably the greatest comic actor of all time. Now I'm going to do separate videos on both Michael Caine and Charlie Chaplin at some future date. I'm just going to mention them because I'm in the area and it just seemed an appropriate thing to do. I was putting in a few more other bits and pieces about the area, but I've taken them out and leave them for another video at another date. But you know, these two individuals are too great to admit when you're walking around these parts, these streets. We've now arrived at the famous Elephant and Castle. Now I believe the name derives from a local coaching inn. Now in the first half of the 20th century, the area was particularly vibrant and was known or nicknamed the Piccadilly of South London. And as you will see over the next couple of minutes in the vlog, it is a junction, if you like, of many roads. But also it's an area that is seeing some massive redevelopment. You can see all the office blocks, the residential tower blocks going up. So it's an area of transition as well. For some people, it suffered some unsympathetic 1960s post-war reconstruction and development. That's very much up to the individual, and it's seen a new wave of redevelopments over the last 10 years with the demolition of the Haygate estate. Now I know the demolition of the Haygate estate was controversial. Many people thought that the Elephant and Castle was moving away from its working class roots. It was losing lots of local residents. There was accusations of social cleansing and really trying to attract a different type of person into the area, and very much the area was losing its roots. The demolition of the shopping centre and the Coronet, the famous music hall venue, just a year or so ago, didn't really help to soften people's perception of an area changing, but perhaps not for the better. Now with all these developments, there's often two sides to the story. Some may hate it, and they may be the local residents. Others might see it as an area of opportunity. Again, it's down to the individual. We've walked from the Elephant and Castle, and we've walked through Borough High Street. We've now ended up at the rave. My favourite venue is my son's birthday, so I'm not sure if he shares quite the same enthusiasm, but I think he seems to like it here. We're taking cover. We're just enjoying some rain for about the first time in 2-3 months. It's a torrential downpour here, so we're supping our pints under cover and just enjoying the early evening of Borough Market. We'll take a quick look at the Shard. We'll soon be on London Bridge and heading back home via Liverpool Street. So thanks very much for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and goodbye from the Anglian Flaneurs.